Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, someone like Mrs. Sharma, maybe she's 70, trying to book a follow-up with her specialist. Phone line's busy, the website's confusing, it's just frustrating.
It really is. Or think about a doctor, Dr. Patel maybe,
Hmm.
an oncologist, just drowning in patient reports, lab results, new research papers, trying to find the best treatment path. The sheer volume of information is staggering. And these aren't just stories, they're daily realities, particularly somewhere like India with its scale.
Exactly. And that's precisely where AI, artificial intelligence, shows such enormous potential, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're talking about AI possibly smoothing out those patient interactions, maybe smart scheduling, or helping clinicians make sense of all that data. The promise is definitely there better patient experiences, a more efficient healthcare system overall.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're really focusing on something vital to making that happen safely, the regulatory landscape for AI in Indian healthcare.
Yeah, critical piece.
We've looked at a really comprehensive book covering AI in healthcare and also some very current articles. One just came out today, actually.
Timely stuff. So our goal here is to, understand what the rules look like right now, really dig into the big governance challenges AI brings, and explore how India is, or maybe should be, navigating all this. How do we get the benefits of AI responsibly?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that balance. But maybe before we dive headfirst into the regulations, it's worth just taking a moment to appreciate the sheer breadth of AI applications being explored in India. The sources really lay this out.
Oh, they do. It's not just one or two things. It covers so much ground.
Yeah, like in the OPD, the outpatient department. Think smart scheduling, making appointments less of a headache, or maybe automated triage using symptoms.
Voice to text for notes, freeing up doctor's time. Even things like helping with medication reconciliation, catching potential clashes or errors. That's Chapter 5 stuff.
And then there are the internal hospital processes, optimizing the supply chain, getting drugs and equipment where they need to be.
Predicting patient flow, managing beds, optimizing staff rotas, all that back-end stuff that makes a hospital run. That's more Chapter 10 territory.
Then you get into the really clinical areas. Radiology AI, helping spot nodules on scans or detecting strokes faster.
Pathology too, counting cells, analyzing complex stains. In the ICU, maybe predicting sepsis risk, or helping decide when a patient's ready to come off a ventilator.
Even in the emergency department, real-time monitoring, assessing patient risk levels, it's pretty advanced stuff.
And it's not just for clinicians. We're seeing large language models, LLMs, being looked at for patient use too. Things like explaining prescriptions in simple terms, helping you understand your lab results, or making those discharge instructions clearer.
And we can't forget the admin side. Optimizing clinic schedules, getting a better handle on procedure costs, managing the whole revenue cycle like helping with coding or stopping claim denials before they happen. Chapters 9, 12, 13 touch on these.
What's really striking is the range, right? From sort of simpler tools that add on to what's already there to these incredibly complex diagnostic or predictive models. And because it touches so many critical parts of healthcare, that's why this regulation conversation is so urgent. It's not theoretical anymore.
Which leads us right into those challenges. Why is regulation so critical? What are the big risks the sources are flagging?
Well, yeah, using AI in healthcare definitely brings risks that need managing. A huge one is data privacy. These AI models, they need vast amounts of patient data to learn. Protecting that sensitive information is, well, non-negotiable.
Absolutely. And the sources really stress the need for strong data governance, proper anonymization techniques.
And India does have a major law here, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, 2023, the DPDP Act.
Right, the sources point that out clearly.
Exactly. And the DPDP Act puts real obligations on anyone handling personally identifiable information, PII, how it's sourced, stored, analyzed, used for AI training, shared. It's all covered. Plus, it gives patients data principles rights, accessing their data, correcting it, erasing it, raising grievances. Any AI system touching patient data has to comply with this.
Okay, so privacy is number one. What else?
Another really significant one is algorithmic bias. This is a tough one. AI learn from the data they're given. If that data reflects existing societal biases, maybe based on race, gender, location, little gave, the AI can actually learn and even amplify those biases.
We've seen examples of that causing real harm, right? Like that U.S. healthcare tool mentioned in the sources that showed racial bias.
Exactly, leading to worse outcomes for certain groups. And the sources note that sometimes these AI tools can be like black boxes, hard to understand how they work. That lack of transparency makes it tough to spot bias, and it can make doctors hesitant to trust the outputs, slowing things down.
So that underlines the need for really careful attention to data quality, making sure it's diverse, representative,
Absolutely critical. And rigorous testing and validation of the models themselves.
which connects directly to transparency and explainability. You need to be able to understand, at least to some extent, why the AI is making a certain recommendation, especially in clinical settings.
Precisely. Regulators are increasingly demanding this. It can't just be magic.
And for AI tools that act like medical devices.
They need rigorous validation and verification, just like traditional devices, but adapted for AI. Safety and efficacy have to be proven. The sources are very clear on that.
Okay. The sources also briefly mentioned job displacement concerns.
They do, yeah. Though the main angle seems to be more about AI augmenting human skills rather than replacing people outright. Think of it as a powerful assistant for doctors, nurses, admin staff. Changing roles, maybe, rather than eliminating them wholesale?
So we've got this picture. Huge potential, but also pretty significant risks. Privacy, bias, transparency, safety. Given all that, where does India actually stand right now with regulating AI in healthcare?
Well, the clear message from the sources is that the regulatory landscape is very much evolving. It's not fully formed yet.
And crucially, as things stand today, there are no specific laws solely for AI in healthcare in India.
That's the key takeaway. But, and this is important, existing laws do apply. We talked about the DPDP Act for data privacy. There are also regulations around medical devices, general principles of patient safety. Those frameworks are relevant.
And the National Digital Health Mission, NDHM, that seems important too.
Very. It's building the digital health infrastructure that many AI applications will plug into, so it's shaping the environment and influencing policy direction.
And this fits into a bigger picture, right? India's overall push on AI.
Yeah, things like the National Strategy for AI from 2018.
Yeah.
You see bodies like NASSCOM putting out guidelines, for instance, on generative AI recently. So there are foundational elements in activity, even without one specific comprehensive AI and healthcare law at this moment.
Okay. It's interesting. One source mentioned India's AI adoption rate is quite high, like 57%. That feels fast, especially without that single federal policy specifically for healthcare. How do we manage that going forward?
That speed definitely adds pressure. The sources really hammer home the need for proactive governance, making sure AI is procured and implemented responsibly, particularly by public health services, and making sure the legal and ethical frameworks actually keep up with the pace of innovation. It's a real challenge.
And then this seems to be where the idea of regulatory sandboxes really comes into play in the sources, especially that recent article.
Yes, exactly. Sandboxes are being floated as a really promising approach here.
Can you just unpack what a sandbox is quickly?
Sure. It's basically a controlled environment. You can test out new technologies like an AI diagnostic tool, maybe with real data or real users, but within very specific boundaries and with safety nets in place. The idea is you let innovation happen, you learn how it works in practice, but you limit the potential risks or any negative impact if something goes wrong.
And other places are doing this.
Oh, yes. The sources mention the EU AI Act looking at sandboxes, and countries like Japan and Norway are already using them for AI development. It's becoming a recognized tool.
So why is the argument particularly strong for India to use sectoral sandboxes like one specifically for healthcare?
Well, a few reasons highlighted in the sources. First, despite that high adoption rate, India lacks that overarching federal AI policy right. So risks need careful management, especially when the government itself might be buying or using these tools. Sandboxes let you test things out, assess the safety and effectiveness in a controlled way.
Makes sense. Any other reasons?
They can help build public trust. People can see the technology is being tested carefully before it's rolled out widely. And maybe most importantly, the sources argue it allows for a more gradual, iterative approach to building the actual regulations.
So instead of trying to write the perfect, comprehensive law up front, which might be impossible or stifle innovation.
Exactly. You use the sandbox experience to learn what works, what the real risks are in the Indian context, and then you build sector-specific rules piece by piece based on evidence.
Sure.
It's seen as potentially more balanced and practical.
And they suggest maybe having someone specific in charge?
Yeah, the idea of a nodal officer, maybe at the federal ministry level, to oversee these healthcare sandboxes, that could help ensure good governance, transparency, accountability in the whole process.
You know, this connects really well to what the book talks about regarding the practicalities of building systems in India.
How so?
Well, it lists regulatory compliance right alongside things like data availability, infrastructure, skills, making things work locally. Regulation isn't an afterthought, it's part of the build process.
Absolutely. And standards like FHIR, fast healthcare interoperability resources keep popping up in the sources too. Regulation needs to think about how these AI systems talk to each other, how they share health data safely and effectively. FHIR is seen as really key for that interoperability. It even opens up potential business opportunities within a regulated framework.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. The tech itself, the machine learning, the LLMs, the data they need, how it's processed.
It's completely tied up with the ethical questions, the bias, the privacy concerns we discussed.
And the need for solid governance and evolving regulations to manage it all. You really can't separate the how it works from the should it work like this and how do we make sure it's safe and fair.
Totally. And that's why you see ideas like the WHO's design for values concept mentioned, trying to build those ethical considerations in right from the start, acknowledging this complexity.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We've seen the, frankly, incredible potential AI has to reshape Indian healthcare for the better.
Definitely. But we've also dug into the really critical challenges data privacy, that tricky issue of algorithmic bias, the need for transparency, and ensuring safety.
We've looked at the current regulatory situation still developing, relying on existing laws for now, but with things like NDHM and broader AI strategies pointing the way forward.
And we spent some time on this compelling idea of using sectoral regulatory sandboxes as a pragmatic way to test innovation and build tailored healthcare AI rules iteratively.
Getting this regulation right feels absolutely fundamental, doesn't it? To unlock all that potential while protecting patients, ensuring privacy, and making sure AI is used ethically across India.
Couldn't agree more. It's probably the single most important factor for successful, responsible AI adoption in healthcare there.
So it really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? With AI moving so fast in healthcare and this call for a more careful, step-by-step regulatory approach using sandboxes, which specific challenge that we talked about today, maybe it's the bias in data, maybe it's ensuring decisions are transparent, maybe it's just securing the data itself, which one do you believe is the most urgent priority for Indian regulators and developers to tackle first? It's a complex calculation, and getting it right will undoubtedly shape the future of health for millions.